I'm got the plane with the thing some patin. Sliding single clean that I wear clean. Won't be the name and count to 15. Yo, it's the late 80s, we gon' get a scene. Breaking on the corner, speakers, bass clean. Jazz in the pop with an alternative.
So just as studios had rushed away from the lavish, spectacle-driven blockbuster model in the late 60s, they rushed back toward it in the 1980s, more interested in recapturing the magic of Jaws or Star Wars box office than finding the next Coppola, Altman, or even Lucas or Spielberg. The decade's excess-driven crowd-pleasing meant plenty of sequels, in turn inspiring the real beginning of franchise mania.
Do we get to win this time?
Still, sequels weren't quite as big in the 80s as they are now, and as expensive follow-ups like Rambo 3, Ghostbusters 2, and Star Trek V left audiences underwhelmed. There was at least a small opening for other types of movies. Robert Redford's Sundance Film Festival was starting to gain more media attention, while some independent productions like Steven Soderbergh's Sex, Lies, and Videotape and Gus Van Sant's My Own Private Idaho garnered attention from both critics and audiences. And important filmmaking voices like Spike Lee and the Coen brothers emerged.
What I feel what I have to do as a filmmaker is present problems so that the discussion can start.
All this lay the groundwork for the indie film boom of the 90s.
You know you're watching a Tim Burton film if it's Burton-esque. So what does that mean exactly? Burton-esque is a unique blend of surrealist nightmare and childlike whimsy, inspired by German expressionism, suburban Americana, and a Gothic sensibility.
I spent so long in the darkness, I'd almost forgotten how beautiful the moonlight is.
The German Expressionism movement from the post-World War I period is defined by distorted or slanting shapes, high-contrast light and dark, and prominent shadows. Burton pays homage to German Expressionist classics, like The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari and Metropolis. And like these older films, Burton's work creates the sense that you're in a stylized dream, giving visual form to emotion.
There was just something about the dynamics and the shapes, with the shadows and the light and dark and you know, like Fritz Lang. Those old films that really captured a spirit and a feeling of like being in a dreamscape or inside of somebody's mind.
He said that he doesn't even remember his own dreams, but that there's so much strange in real life that it often seems like a dream. There's also a clear Gothic influence in Burton's work. Gothic literature is preoccupied with death, and Burton's movies often feature ghosts, skeletons, and cemeteries. We also see the Gothic influence in his love of tortured or alienated heroes.
As soon as we get settled, we'll build you a dark room in the basement, okay?
My whole life is a dark room.
Edward Scissorhands is Burton's spin on the most famous Gothic character of all time, Victor Frankenstein's monster.
Etiquette tells us just what is expected of us and guards us from all humiliation and discomfort.
These influences might seem to paint a picture of deep existential angst, but Burton's films have an underlying sense of fun, wonder, and optimism. To him, thinking about death doesn't have to be tragic. He said he feels inspired by the Day of the Dead's positive, celebratory spirit. So counterintuitively, Burton's ghoulish, morbid movies are life-affirming.
You set me free. Now I can do the same.
Just look at how he chose to end Beetlejuice, a film that's all about dead people haunting the living, with a sing-along to Jump in the Line.
Jump in the line, rock your body, child!
Is there a murder in your film?
Nobody sees the world like David Lynch sees the world. These are really movies that when you see them, you know you're in the hands of a extremely unique sensibility.
One of the most influential film directors in recent history, David Lynch is relentlessly individual. Anything the director touches strikes us immediately as Lynchian to the eye. When we hear the word Lynchian, we think of a white picket fence adorned with prickly red roses, a well-manicured lawn, hiding the beetles that hiss underneath, mundane images that turn macabre. Surrealism mixed with a film noir tone in Americana settings. David Lynch's personal brand of surrealism exposes the strange within the familiar, and the reality within the dream. In a long career of successes, Lynch's greatest achievement is framing a cinematic approach around small-town American life and its light and dark versions of the American dream. Some of Lynch's key trademarks as a director are a universe dictated by dream logic. It's reflected in sequences of surrealism and magical realism that echo the subconscious state. Recurring motifs like 1950s America and the dark underbelly of suburban life. The visual and thematic juxtaposition of light and dark. Gritty images of industrial wastelands. Eerie ambient noise. Red curtains that obscure the passage of time, deformed bodies, and complex female characters that play on our expectations of the archetypal femme fatale. This is often reflected in dual roles for single female actresses, exploring the split identity of a fractured female self. 1986's Blue Velvet, a film viewing experience akin to waking up from a nap on LSD and wondering if you're still tripping, follows Kyle MacLachlan's Jeffrey Beaumont, a college student who stumbles upon a severed ear in the grass. From this scene on, we watch him struggle with an inner duality that tugs him between the poles of innocence and manhood.
What kind of beer do you like? Heineken! Heineken! Pabst Blue Ribbon!
Welcome to that new age. They call themselves yuppies.
Basically, it's somebody who just likes to party amidst balloons and other yuppies.
Are you a yuppie?
I guess so, I'm here.
We're going for the 80s.
We're going for the six figure. That's all we want.
They call this the first yuppie cotillion. Forget dress for success, said the invitation. Dress for excess. Black tie only. If Mom and Dad thought this generation was going to the dogs, think again. This is the generation that has discovered hard work and success. Are you listening, Mom and Dad? And the BMW. At the Yuppie Cotillion, BMW meant beauty, money, wealth. Some didn't get the joke and protested. There was even a generation gap.
And you guys are out here with signs downing money. Obviously, I marched in the 60s peace marches with my parents.
We're the generation that you betrayed! That's who we are! That's who we are! You betrayed us!
Get out of our society and go to Moscow. Go everywhere you think is better.
Consider Peter Hirschfeld and you will understand how the times have been a-changing.
I was very active in the Columbia and Berkeley demonstrations back in the late 60s and early 70s.
And now what do you do for a living?
Now I'm working within the media, within advertising. As an account executive for most of the high-tech and computer accounts.
The Yuppie Cotillion even came with its own dance card. The options, would you like to dance, hire me, or do lunch? There was brie and white wine, of course, since this event was supposed to be a joke, but a sort of sad one.
It's unfortunate that people have become as self-absorbed as they have been. I mean, considering the vehemence with which people held their beliefs at that time, it's hard to would have been hard to anticipate that 180-degree turn.
Hello? What the fuck are you doing at the office? We have plans tonight. Monstrous events are scheduled.
No, look, I'm gonna be working on this thing most of the night. Then I'm gonna go home and get some sleep.
Give me a time, I'll pick you up.
Call me in a half an hour, all right?
This time we're keeping an eye on the markets in Oliver Stone's 1980s classic Wall Street, because we think that it's the film that summarises that decade better than any other. Wall Street is a 1987 big business thriller directed by Oliver Stone, who incidentally was in the middle of quite a hot streak that other directors would kill for at that point. He'd made Platoon just the year before and followed Wall Street with Born on the 4th of July and JFK, rounding off a crazy run of success from 1986 to 1991. Stone was making films at pace and he was managing to capture a moment, zeitgeist of a more cynical mainstream audience in a pretty unique way for a studio filmmaker. In Wall Street, he transferred his dual father figures motif from Platoon and made the film that managed to perfectly crystallise the look and feel of the decade that made greed not just good, but fashionable. To set the scene, in the 1980s, populist right-wing governments in the West tried to draw back the Iron Curtain and then set up a McDonald's behind it. The underlying motive for ending the war, the Cold War that is, wasn't the prospect of peace, it was the chance to make money. The financial revolution in deregulated markets caused an explosion in the world of money. In plain terms, money went from being the means to being the end, and Wall Street is a film that uses its production design, camera work and lighting to capture an aesthetic of unrestrained greed.
You got me.
So then, why Wall Street? It could be that the film isn't remembered particularly well. Mostly, people remember the antagonist, Gordon Gekko, played with devilishly handsome glee by Michael Douglas, rattled on about greed, and he wore the hell out of some very expensive suits.
Greed, for lack of a better word, is good. Greed is right.
They also remember some of the crackling one-liners that fly around the office.
30 seconds after the Challenger blew up, he's on the phone selling NASA stock short.
But having re-watched the film, there's so much more to it. And the thing that struck me was the design of the film is pretty much perfect. It captures not only the look of that era, but it also captures the ethic, the moral heart of the story that Oliver Stone was trying to tell. Stone was primarily a screenwriter before he moved into directing. His scripts are frequently detailed, but Wall Street was especially clear on how the locations needed to look, especially the one we're going to talk about. I've been trying to say that these characters are projected through their surroundings and clothing as much as through their actions and words, and that this makes the film the most indicative of the 1980s, but really, I should have just said, look at this ridiculous sushi making machine, is there anything more 80s? No? Case closed.
Good evening. Today is Black Monday, the day the Dow dropped more than 500 points, the day the Dow dropped more than 22%, almost double the rate of the Black Monday that signaled the beginning of the crash of 1929. But this crash of 1987 is not just an American experience. Around the world, stock markets fell.
From the opening bell, the market was in free fall. After last Friday's record 108-point loss, analysts had expected a rally. Instead,
it's a panic. Everyone's in panic. Everybody, we're trying to find a bottom. We're trying to, as a floor broker, I see stocks trading 10 points below where they traded Thursday, and I'm saying this has to be the bottom. And then they trade 5 points lower than that.
By noon, the market was down about 150 points. The tape delayed by more than an hour. But it only got worse as trading brokers struggled to cope with a blizzard of sell orders.
New Mexico, we have some work here to do.
We have a lot of people that play with very big bucks in the financial markets. What about the rest of us who don't have more than a passing interest in the stock market? Should we be concerned or interested in what's going on?
Oh, you better believe it. Everything that happened today should shake us up.
Most Gen Xers are in school during the crash. So at first, they think so what?
I'd never quite understood the stock exchange game enough to be interested. I would like to meet this Dow Jones. I thought he was the guy in all the Disney movies.
I vividly remember that day because all these classmates of mine in college were huddled around the TV. And I was like, what's going on? Full on Keanu Reeves, what's up? Stock market's crashing. Well, that's fine. I'm a creative. Who cares? I'm going to be a writer. It turned out that had an impact on the job market. It turned out there weren't as many jobs.
Recession is already here.
General Motors and Ford are laying off almost 25,000 workers.
Coming out of college with a degree doesn't matter. No one can find work.
I applied for every single opening in my field, but there's nothing.
Times are hard. You just gonna have to swallow your pride.
For Gen Xers, the new reality sees the birth of McJobs and the death of traditional careers.
White-collar workers are hit the hardest this time.
The stereotype of the slacker is born.
The whole idea of us being pegged as slackers, I think, came out of the fact that we couldn't get jobs.
People started looking at different ways that they could do things precisely because those traditional paths weren't there anymore.
That's kind of what Gen X was. A bunch of us kind of going well, maybe there's a back door into this bitch.
All sorts of independent film, independent music, alternative ways of working. That doesn't make you a slacker. It actually makes you the opposite.
There have been a bunch of movies that sprinkle band cameos between stabs of a catchy soundtrack, and while I don't have anything against these efforts, in those instances punk is treated as a texture rather than substance. So, how do you take something as contradictory, calamitous, and utterly cathartic as punk, and do it justice with a camera?
Fuck.
One way is to toss out the structure and bring in the nihilism with 1984's Repo Man. Alex Cox's hodgepodge of cigarette smoke and stained upholstery is a shard of glass in the cereal bowl for the major studio who had the ignorance to release it. There's an anti-authoritarian streak a mile wide, from vaporizing cops and middle fingers to management, whilst frequently acknowledging the blatant inconsistencies of the punk ethos.
Fuck you.
Otto, in all his slam-dancing, beer-swilling abandon, takes up the Repo Man role to try and escape the generic brands of Reagan's America. He does this by suiting up and stripping the working class of what little possessions they have, dodging the cold slap of poverty by strapping on the iron boot of capitalism.
1989. Superheroes made their entrance in Tim Burton's masterpiece Batman. For the first time in the costumed heroes industry, a director blended the best parts of the character comic fans loved with the action and riveting storyline that movie fans craved. The film single-handedly set the standard for comic book films for the next decade and unleashed the first whispers of a movie world that could sustain a superhero.
Warner Brothers is spending millions to bring millionaire Bruce Wayne and his alter ego to life. Is this a gamble for the studio? Will Batman pay off? Will there be bat hysteria?
Because the experience of watching movies is often so personal and emotional, it can be easy to forget about the less glamorous business side that goes into the making of a movie, or in this case, the making of a pop culture craze. When Tim Burton's Batman came out, there was a mass hysteria, a mass bat-steria, of buying everything with this symbol on it.
But they've gone nuts now because it's extended into other areas.
Tongue depressors, everything. Medical supplies.
Exactly, medical supplies. They got the new Batman oxygen tent.
Right, reflex hammers. They got
the whole thing. The bat logo. You're fine. Just let me take off my bat hat for wearing.
This is a story about Warner Brothers engineered Batmania.
Lights out! Now you want to get nuts? Come on, let's get nuts.
The year is 1989. In China, the military opens fire on pro-democracy protesters in Tiananmen Square. The Berlin Wall is dismantled after 28 years, marking the fall of the Iron Curtain. And in the United States, people all over the country were falling victim to Batmania.
Well, it didn't take the summer solstice to make people go batty in Los Angeles. The premiere of the movie Batman did that job. It took 10 years for the movie to reach the silver screen, and it looks like it struck gold.
But this Batenthusiasm didn't come out of nowhere. Tim Burton's Batman is more than just a movie. In fact, it's best understood as a gigantic multimedia and multi-market sales campaign. Especially as film studios have been acquired, or merged with larger companies that have interests in other industries, the movie itself has become just one part of a larger product line. The Reagan administration made efforts to deregulate the media and communications industry, which removed several laws designed to prevent media monopolies. This paved the way for the eventual merger with Time Inc., creating Time Warner.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Time Warner will be the largest exporter of American media and entertainment. This will be one company that will help tip the balance of trade in America's favor.
The merger was announced in March of 1989, just 3 months before Batman's release, and allowed the studio to utilize all of Time's resources to drive the event feel of the movie. Because Time and Warner were now linked, Warner had to try and set up their projects to feed as many different branches of Time Warner as possible. This means that Warner would need to figure out how to have their movie help sell records, comics, and television programs. Time Warner owned the comics that would be the basis for the movie, they owned the television stations that would create hype, and they owned the record label that would sell the soundtrack. Time Warner was betting it all on Black.
I'll watch these fast and have them back tomorrow, I promise. More movies, more nights, more fun. Blockbuster Video! Wow, what a difference!
At the press of a button, we can get hold of a pretty recent film and watch it. It's not an event so much, it is just normal life. And so, any company that didn't really accommodate that, I think has found themselves in trouble.
I think Blockbuster, in general, coming into here is like being a kid again, and the smell when you walk in here too. It's all movies.
What the hell are you doing?
I'm sorry. We thought you were someone else. Successful test.
Ghostbusters on the job. Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, and Harold Ramis as psychic phenomenon exterminators in one of the new movies we'll be reviewing this week, Ghostbusters. And joining me in the balcony is Gene Siskel, film critic of the Chicago Tribune.
And across the aisle from me, Roger Ebert, film critic of the Chicago Sun-Times. The film is Beat Street, a drama set in the South Bronx, one of the birthplaces of breakdancing, graffiti art, and record mixing. This film is as much a tour of those elements of what is called the hip-hop culture as it is a specific story about a couple of brothers trying to live out their dreams. One wants to be a dancer, the other a record spinner, and they both enjoy hanging out with their breakdancing friends and battling each other in dance-off.
MTV is well known for its impact on visual media of all kinds, but it also had an impact socially and politically, primarily through its support of rap music. While in its early days, the channel seriously avoided black music and was even accused of musical racism, it later realized the power and importance of the genre and brought rap to the masses with the highly successful show, Yo MTV Raps. That helped rap to become the musical and social force that it is today. A group of current rap artists joined forces to give an oral history of their music in honor of MTV's 10th birthday. Check this out.
Rap is the child that was spoiled by the ghetto, about 15 years past.
The children adored it, the parents ignored it.
And the critics said it wouldn't last.
Yeah, boy! York was the town where it was all going down. From Roxy up to the Fever. Poppin' and graffiti even made it more streety, and the Zulus didn't take no shorts either. Records were being made, everything was being played, and Pumpkin was the king of the street. DJs were looking from uptown to Brooklyn. Funky never heard before beat. The production was minimal. Attitude was criminal. As we started to gain more ears. Venues were sold out, rap gained more clout, and Run DMC were all pioneers. 012, 012.
Lifestyle of celebration, and Coke was part of that lifestyle.
It was the glitzy drug.
When crack came along, it changed everything about the black community, and it changed everything about America.
It was like the gold rush. It was people coming from all over to buy this wonder drug.
The drug so powerful, it will make you sell the clothes off your back.
The reporting played right into all of these stereotypes and this narrative.
But it's like that, and that's the way it is.
We must be intolerant of drug use and drug sellers.
You got a war on drugs. Is it not a war on the people that are supplying the drugs? Or is it only a war on the victims of the drug war?
Just say no.
It felt extraordinarily hypocritical. This was happening at a time when the U.S. government was turning a blind eye to cocaine smuggling.
Our goal was to defeat communism in Central America. And if that meant drugs got in and the youth of America used them, well, that was the way it was going to be.
We knew that they were in on it. We knew that they were dealing on the side.
What would you steal? Money and drugs and guns, whatever was there.
That was kind of like chemical warfare on black communities.
Iran-Contra is the term used to reference the scandal involving the Reagan administration illegally selling weapons to Iran to fund the Contra terrorists in Nicaragua, but this treasonous scandal is even worse than it seems on the surface. The Reagan administration also helped fund the Contras with revenue from crack cocaine. This is not just some conspiracy theory, this is, documented. Reagan and the CIA conspired with the Contras to smuggle cocaine from South America into the U.S. The administration shielded the smugglers from investigation. By most accounts, Reagan had Oliver North funnel the proceeds to the Contra army in Nicaragua. U.S. flight crews smuggled both arms and cocaine on their return flights. Some hangars used to dock the airplanes were owned by the CIA and National Security Council, and some were operated by Oliver North himself. After the cocaine was smuggled into the US, it would then be sold to a drug distributor. The distributors would then convert the cocaine into crack and distribute it to street-level dealers. The actions by the CIA and the Reagan administration are credited with sparking the crack epidemic by flooding the drug market with an unprecedented amount of high-quality cocaine at a low cost. the Reagan administration's own war on drugs was escalated due to the rise in drug crime, which itself was the responsibility of the Reagan administration to begin with.
Letterboxing is a way of using the rather square format of a television screen to create the oblong format of what we call widescreen filming.
The term letterbox is because it looks like a letterbox. It looks like a slot you drop an envelope in.
All films made from 1953 on, for the past 50 years, have been made in one widescreen form or another. Whether it's just normal widescreen or the 70 millimeter or CinemaScope or Panavision.
There are many things that go into the making of a movie. One of those things is the shape of the movie. How wide is the screen? And how does that impact the shots that make up the movie? However, the widescreen process does not fit on the normal television screen. So what is often done is what's called pan and scan, where they lop off the sides.
Pan and scan is when they try to make a widescreen film, a rectangle, fit into a square format on a television screen.
And that is, in a sense, technically redirecting the movie. Take a film like Ben-Hur, the William Wyler film. The chariot sequence is one of the greatest action sequences ever done in movies. Ben-Hur is driving 4 horses. Very often you'll find that there'll only be 2 in the frame. You lose the effect of all the stunt work in that sequence, which is one of the great climactic sequences in all of cinema, reduced to a confused blur.
Trendy fashion became increasingly important in the 1980s, especially amongst the younger generation. Fashion tended to mimic what was being worn in movies, on television, and by musical performers. As a result, teased hair and excessive makeup became popular. Many teenage girls also wore large hoop earrings, bangles and bracelets, and other accessories. Neon colors became prominent, and millions of kids began wearing athletic shoes made by either Nike or Reebok.
From ABC, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings. Reporting tonight from Berlin.
From the Berlin Wall specifically, take a look at them. They've been there since last night. They are here in the thousands. They are here in the tens of thousands. Occasionally they shout, Die Mauer muss weg, the wall must go. Thousands and thousands of West Germans come to make the point that the wall has suddenly become irrelevant. Something, as you can see, almost to party on. How do you measure such an astonishing moment in history?